Hi, this is Brian from Dominion Bible Ministries. Today, Bobby is going to dive into the biblical reason behind healing prayer failures. Let us not be unbelieving, faithless, and perverse. God bless you.
So the problem is not on God's side of the equation. The problem is on our side of the equation. So then, how many healing failures do we have in the Bible? We only have one, and then Jesus followed up and got the job done, right? So all we have is the epileptic boy, and so the epileptic boy, he was not healed when the disciples prayed for him, but then when Jesus followed up and prayed, then he was healed. So ultimately, there was no healing failure. What did Jesus say to his disciples when the boy wasn't healed? He said, "You're faithless and perverse." Let's just go to Matthew 17:17. He said, and when they had come to the multitude, a man came to him, kneeling down to him, and saying, "Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic and suffers severely. For he often falls into the fire and often into the water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him." Then Jesus answered and said, "O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him here to me." And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him. And the child was cured from that very hour. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, "Why could we not cast it out?" So Jesus said to them, "Because of your unbelief. For surely I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." So the answer from Jesus was the reason they couldn't bring forth healing, they were faithless in that particular situation. They had been successful before, but they were faithless in this one situation. They were perverse in this particular situation. Their thinking was twisted. They were faithless. They were without faith. Their thoughts were perverse. They were twisted. So there was something wrong in their thinking for this particular situation. And then Jesus reiterates, it's because of your unbelief that the boy was not healed. So this is always the answer. The problem's not on God's side if somebody's not healed. The problem is somewhere on our side of the equation. The typical answer would be we are lacking faith. There's something twisted in our thinking. We heard some wrong doctrine. It's causing us to doubt. That's the biggest problem we have. We learn wrong doctrine in churches. We develop wrong doctrine. We have a string of failures, and then we create a doctrine to explain why. And now we have an excuse for failure going into the future. But that's why Curry Blake, he spends most of his time coming against what he calls sacred cows, which are traditions of men, which are excuses for failure. That is the number one thing that we're dealing with